distinguished members of the internet community, ladies and gentlemen, hello. My name is Kishna, Kishna Dhondee, and I am the legal officer at AFRINIC. And it is indeed my privilege to be here participating at the AIS 2025, although online, and to speak on the AFRINIC governance, the lessons we learned in the last few years, and what, from my perspective, I believe could be the way forward. Without ado, so as you all know, AFRINIC is the sole regional internet registry for Africa, and our core responsibility is for the allocation and management of IP number resources across the continent. I'm sure you would all agree with me that it all started with the internet pioneers on the continent, mostly amongst engineers from the community. But you would also agree with me that governance matters. And when governance is weak, stakeholder confidence declines. Operational efficiency suffers, and regional internet development is held back. So allow me to briefly take you through the recent governance crisis we faced at AFRINIC in the last few years. We faced a prolonged leadership vacuum. Everybody is now, everybody has been talking about AFRINIC not having a correct board, a functioning board for the last few years, concerns, apprehensions being there about how, about the sustainability of the organization, the digitalization of the continent. We understand that. And thankfully, to our colleagues at the office, at the headquarters here in Mauritius, despite this, the challenges we faced without a functioning board, without a CEO, but we've kept the light on. Although maybe not to the satisfaction of many stakeholders, but the registry has remained on. That's one of the first things to note. The leadership vacuum has been a prolonged one. You realize not having a functioning board since mid-June 2022 up to mid-September 2025. It's a hell lot of time for an organization serving a continent. It's not acceptable. And in the meantime, along that passage, there have been allegations and allegations, misinformations outside about mismanagement and irregularities in operations. Somebody just going Google about AFRINIC today, you find information about mismanagement and irregularities. Something that would appear to have started since 2018, 2019, and have since escalated and resulted in legal disputes. But the impact of all these have been real and substantial, because you would agree that the disruption that this has had on the normal organizational operations. AFRINIC for some time not being able to allocate resources and perform what is meant to be performing as a sole RIO in the region. Not having a board also means not being delays in policy implementation and member services. Understandably, members are paying their fees, and you expect adequate services to be provided. And to add to that, the damage that this vacuum, this crisis, this issue has caused to the reputation of AFRINIC as a Pan-African organization is, I would say, in my view, is irreparable. And obviously, now there's a need to build that trust. There's been so much misinformation about AFRINIC outside. Obviously, without a board, without a CEO, it's not always possible for a staff. I understand the expectation. The expectations are always high. The expectation is always there for someone from AFRINIC to come and give AFRINIC's version of the story. We reading articles being published online, and it's not always easy, speaking for myself, to digest the amount of misinformation outside. So the impact have been real, because we from inside the organization, we've seen it so close. And not being able to react makes it even worse. And so this has pushed me to identify three that I would categorize as three main areas or root causes of this governance crisis. Firstly, lack of clear succession planning for executive leadership. I hear previous presenters earlier today talking about how the situation would have been if there were clear provisions in the constitution, the bylaw, that in the absence of a functioning board, who could easily step in and maintain business continuity. Yes, that must be addressed. The drafters of the bylaws back in the old days, the pioneers for this organization, back in the early 2000s, nobody could have contemplated at that time that there would ever be a time when AFRINIC will be there, as if on paper, but then there's no functioning board to represent and defend the interest of the organization. The last bylaw review we did in 2020, again, it was done in consultation with the community. But then, even then, in 2020, nobody could have contemplated what was waiting for us ahead in 2 years' time. So, one of the first things that I would strongly recommend to the new leadership now we have today, the newly elected directors, would be for a bylaw review. Second root cause I identified, based on so much information about mismanagement and irregularities in operations. We don't know whether they are genuine or just frivolous allegations, which is why we need to review our internal controls. If there is none, adequate safeguard must be put in place. And if they're here already, then they need to be reviewed so that they could be strengthened. Because you would agree, and it's factual, it's in the public domain. AFRINIC has not, the position for the internal auditor has remained vacant for long. And without a board since June 2022 means you don't have a subcommittee of the board to oversee operations. Overseeing operations doesn't mean interfering in operations, because ultimately it's the responsibility of the board to oversee operations of the organization. And thirdly, the third root cause which I identified is the gaps in transparency and communication with members. It's in the bylaw anyway, where we have an obligation to communicate with members in all matters affecting their interests. At some point, we'll have to undergo a process of introspection and see whether what we've been doing so far actually met the expectations of our community of members, or perhaps certain things needs to be reviewed. The frequency of communication, the communication channels to be adopted, because the mailing list cannot, again, in my humble opinion, cannot continue the way it has been so far. The whole purpose and intent behind those mailing lists must be reviewed, so that all these communication channels, they serve the purposes they were meant to serve. Because otherwise, if the mailing list turns into a battlefield, then everyone loses track over core issues, which actually at times you may want to pass on to the community, but then you get sidetracked or diverted because of irrelevant discussions or matters which may not necessarily be in the common interest of the organization and by extension, the community at large. So in all crises, there are lessons learned. First and foremost today, given the prevailing circumstances, now that AFRINIC has a board, the board will have to deliver, of course, and meet the expectations of the members. So we need this, the content needs a strong, independent, and accountable board. Transparency and communication, I've talked about. Succession planning, I've mentioned about the need to review the bylaw and make it more proactive rather than simply reviewing from a reactive perspective. I've talked about internal controls, the need for regular audits in order to minimize risk of mismanagement. And of course, stakeholder engagement, engagement with the community of our members. And when I say engagement, I always say real and meaningful active engagement with the community members. Because if I go back to our last annual general members meeting held in Mauritius in 2022, at a time when the audited financial statements were being presented, and we observed that only 39 representatives of our resource members voting in favor of an audited financial statement, then that statistics speaks louder. So the question is, where are our members? And thankfully, this time, when we look at the statistics, the election turnout, and it looks very encouraging because we've been able to break all past records of election turnouts at AFRINIC. So attempts must be made, efforts must be made, investment must go into preserving, because now we have a benchmark. So all efforts must be done to preserve that engagement and enhance that engagement of our members. Because at the end of the day, we cannot say that it is a membership-based organization and we don't see the members. We cannot talk about bottom-up model or self-regulatory framework. And if we don't see our members, the members must be part and parcel of the whole process. And it's only then that AFRINIC will succeed. Otherwise, it will just be a long process. So how do we move forward? A strong governance is key. And to strengthen that governance, we need to clearly define the roles and responsibilities of the board and executive management. Regular board training on governance best practices is important as well. Leadership continuity. For example, just to throw the card on the table. If tomorrow we are faced anew with a situation where there is no functioning board, then the community of the members must start brainstorming, at least at this stage, about which organ should have the authority to intervene and appoint interim directors or interim company officers. Or if there's no CEO, who should be appointed, who should be eligible to be appointed as interim CEO or officer in charge, so that the business continuity can be maintained at all times. Transparency and accountability is key. And this relates to communication, regular updates to members on strategic and operational matters. Engaging the members in policy development and decision-making was enhancing member services and community support. So, like I said again, AFRINIC being a membership-based organization cannot just be a slogan. We need to walk the talk. We need to adopt a member-centric approach so that we can give full and real effect to what we call a membership-based organization. Because if members don't take control of its own organization, then you are leaving the doors open to any third parties to enter. And this is where you then run the risk of losing control of your own organization. Risk management, strengthening the internal audit, and having adequate control frameworks, and being consistent in whatever we do. So we need to ensure and preserve a legal and ethical standard, ensure that these standards are consistently applied. So this is what having observed what we have experienced and faced at AFRINIC over the last few years, this is what I believe, at least as a bare minimum, as to what this organization requires. Obviously, that said, ultimately the board will consider, in its own wisdom, collectively decide on what should be its priorities in due course. But these are just few ideas from my perspective. So with this, you would appreciate that though governance crisis can be challenging, but it always comes with opportunity and it always offers valuable lessons. And AFRINIC's resilience depends on three things: strong leadership, be it the board or the CEO at operational level, transparent operations, and that's where communication, frequent communication becomes key, and active member engagement. And I qualify it again. I mean, real and meaningful member engagement. And so by learning from our past challenges, and this is how AFRINIC can continue to serve the continent effectively and sustainably. We cannot just come today and just look forward without looking back as to what might have gone wrong in the past, or take lessons from our past experiences, or at least take stock of where matters stand. So for each and every step forward, you have to at least look back, take one step back, look back, and then see what needs to be preserved, what needs to be reviewed, and then devise your strategy from there. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end of my presentation, or we call it presentation, or an opportunity for me to share my views or my perspective with the community. So it's been a real pleasure, and I'm happy in case there's the moderator, you have questions for me. So I'll be happy to assist.
Thank you so much, Krishna. I think your legal but also internal perspective was very important, and I think it gives us good food for thought for the discussions coming ahead. Maybe before we move on to the discussions, let me say a few words, which are my own perspectives as well. So governance challenges are something that no organization can completely avoid. At some time in their life, every organization faces them. This is because in spite of the many theories of management, there is no single model that works for all. Each organization evolves within its own realities. It has its own mission, stakeholders, resources and limitations, staff and circumstances. As a result, every organization must in some way invent its governance as it goes along. Some organizations manage to adapt, improve, and grow stronger over time. Others, unfortunately, fail to do so and disappear, often before reaching their 5th anniversary. AFRINIC has faced its share of governance challenges. What made its situation more visible was that its governance system could not resolve its internal and external issues quickly enough. The result was near paralysis, which we all witnessed over the past few years. Today, however, AFRINIC has a new chance. With a complete board in place, everything is possible. But for AFRINIC to flourish, we must learn from past lessons, as Krishna said, and ensure that we as a community are part of the solution and not part of the problem. That is why we are here to discuss what we, the African Internet technical community, can do to help AFRINIC seize this opportunity and move forward. Before we begin, let me set the tone of the discussion. The discussion will follow the African Internet Summit Code of Conduct. You are free to raise issues of the past and even to disagree with one another, but no personal attacks, please. I'm glad that this was the case this morning, which shows that we have already learned something from the past. Furthermore, I strongly encourage you to focus on the future. This meeting is not about judging individuals. There are other instances for that, and we should leave it to them. Our mandate here is different, to discuss the way forward and how the technical community can help bring AFRINIC out of this crisis and to new heights. Last, I apologize if my voice is not good and I'm even sluggish. I'm a bit sick. I have an asthma crisis, so bear with me. Thank you. Okay, Amin, do you want to say something?
Third question now, based on his presentation. So I don't know if I have enough time to address all matters.
Okay, make it short because there are others
There
who
is
have.
no way to make it short. If we really want to hold discussions, we have to hold meaningful discussions, okay?
Unfortunately, I have. How much time do we have? Because it's several years of. Everybody has lots of issues.
Yeah.
So we have to start the discussion and not end it here.
I'll suggest that you choose the burning one because we are having an open mic session.
Very good. Very
yes,
good.
choose
Okay.
the burning one.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kishna. How are you? I take your presentation today as this is sarcastic comment. Okay, don't take me serious for it, but it's as if like you want to like sell yourself as a new legal advisor also for AFRINIC again. So I'm going to say what you have addressed in your presentation is only the symptoms. You didn't go to the core matters. I, for one, I have communicated with you not less than 100 times by email, especially when I paid the fees for my new allocation, and I told you that AFRINIC is legally bound to give me those IP resources which have not given to me. You are leaving no option to me but to go to court. You decided to completely ignore that. And you are talking about communication. That's ironic, I mean. And you talk about transparency and communication again. And legal cases have been lodged into the court, one after the other. No single email was coming from your side, at least to inform the members of what was going on. Don't you find yourself responsible for that? Then, on the issue of restoration and whatever, to the best of my knowledge, there was a board resolution to be passed at that point of time in 2023, and I have the court order with me here. Okay, actually there was an injunction that stopped that, all right? And AFRINIC didn't even bother to go to the court, at least to defend this injunction, which was against appointment of an auditor, appointment of COO at that time, even though somebody was preferring somebody above everybody else. I will just put it this way, sorry. Okay, I don't want to mention any names. And among the resolutions on that board, the resolution that day, there was appointment of auditor to fill the vacancy of seat number 4. What did you do as a legal advisor? I mean, for the last 4 years, you have been silent. Even when I personally send you an email or any member send you an email, you will say, we'll get back to you. And that's it. Now you come today to lecture us. Please, I would like to know where is this coming from? Thank you.
Thank you, Amin. Okay, can you please respond? Krishna?
Because you would appreciate that when you have a receiver appointed for the organization. It is the receiver who is in control and in command of the organization. And all the authority of the organization is vested in that body, the receiver. And even if we would have had a board, the powers of the board would have been vested in the receiver. And so you cannot do anything without the go-ahead of that receiver. And when you have instructions to adhere to, as staff, we have to strictly adhere to instructions. The least we could do is to acknowledge that an email has been sent, and then transmit the request, the request for information to the person in charge of the organization. We cannot, unfortunately, as much as we would want to provide such information in us or solicited, we cannot bypass the authority or the hierarchy of the organization. That's one. Second, there's been a question regarding an injunction dated January 2023. I remember that case because there was an attempt to pass a written resolution in the absence of a co-rate board at that time. And part of that resolution was to effect certain appointment. Unfortunately, due to a leakage of information, that information was leaked, and then somebody managed to build a case on the basis of that information and managed to secure an injunction against those intended appointments. And the date I mentioned is very, very important, January 2023. And I mentioned earlier on, we stopped having a co-rate board since mid-June 2022. The official receiver, the first receiver, was only appointed in September 2023. So when that case came in January 2023, there was no way, because the case is entered against AFRINIC. And there's no way, in the absence of a board, more so in the absence of a CEO, that anyone at AFRINIC, a staff at AFRINIC, regardless of the rank, even the most long-standing serving HOD at AFRINIC, would have gone to court or retained services of lawyers to go and defend that case. Which is why all these cases involving AFRINIC, cases entered in 2021, 2022, they've just been lying idle at the court for the time being, because AFRINIC has not been able to pursue in its defense, because AFRINIC is a company limited by guarantee. It's a company supposedly represented by a board. Usually the board would delegate it the power to represent the company to a CEO. So when you don't have a functioning board, you don't have a CEO, and then you have a case. Fine. There was a previous board resolution, because the resolutions are published. I can talk about it, where the previous board had retained services of external lawyers to represent AFRINIC. So the only thing we could legally do, I can speak for the laws of Mauritius as it is. The only thing that we could legally do is to ask our external lawyers to inform them of the existence of this new case, and for them to put an appearance for AFRINIC in that new case, even when there was no board. But then for those external lawyers to be able to defend the case of AFRINIC, they would need someone from AFRINIC who has the authority to come, because all these cases, by way of procedure, they all go by way of an affidavit. So you would need someone who would have that authority. So he could go to court and say, well, I am duly authorized to swear this affidavit on behalf of AFRINIC. So talking about January 2023, that was not possible, unfortunately.
Okay,
So
I think, Kishna, I think you have explained it well. I mean, I give you 30 seconds.
Just follow up.
And 30 seconds
10
for...
seconds. 10 seconds. Follow up.
Okay.
On the matter of the injunction is against African Network Information Center and Executive Services Limited, contrary to what you said. The people that Executive Services Limited is the legal, I think, representative of AFRINIC. They should have gone to court on behalf of AFRINIC and explained everything and defended this case. Please correct your information. I have piles of documents from AFRINIC. Secondly, when there is no CEO, that there are communications even before the receiver. Not everything we say, the receiver, the official receiver, the receiver, the official receiver, okay? You know that our communication personally together goes back to 2019 or 2020. So please also, don't try to mislead us. Thank you.
Krishna, if you want to speak for 30 seconds, you can, but let me say something here. I think this is almost a personal issue that needs to be resolved. I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be resolved, but I'm sure Krishna would agree that now that the hands are untied, or at least they will be untied soon, then I think one of the first things that I think AFRINIC will have to do is resolve that issue. I think it requires more than this kind of public discussion to resolve it. So I'm sure, Krishna, you can say that because as a distinguished member of AFRINIC, Amin has, I believe, the right to have answers to what happened. I completely understand it was a very, very special situation. Your hands were tied and you cannot do everything, but we cannot discuss full detail here. Krishna, do you want to say something?
No, I totally agree with you. This is, in fact, the most appropriate way forward, because now that there is a board, the board will take stock of all pending cases and decide who will represent AFRINIC in all these cases and to whom it will delegate the authority to represent the AFRINIC, to represent the company, so that all these pending cases can then follow their normal course.
Thank you very much. Any other comment or question? Are there online questions? Yes, please go on. No, online questions first. No. Yes, please go on. Can you give him the mic?
Yes, I'm here.
You have the online question?
Yes,
okay.
I have the online question. I don't have the name yet, but it asks, is it possible to put a clause in the bylaw that allow AFRINIC not to be sued? Put one, a leader in cause can be sued, so that he can face a loan. Probably someone translating it from French. So I'll just read it as it is, try and make sense of it, okay? Is it possible to put a clause in the bylaw that allow AFRINIC not to be sued? Put a leader in case can be sued, so that he can face alone the justice with support of AFRINIC lawyer.
Okay. Can you make a sense of that, Krishna?
Yes. I get the point. The point is what security layers we can add in order to protect AFRINIC from future lawsuits. I agree with that, with that perspective. Yes, because when you look at the registration service agreement, the RSA, you don't have a dispute resolution clause in that. I made that, it was one of my first observations I made when I joined AFRINIC in 2019. And obviously, and then we were taken up by the whole event. So even then, amending the RSA is not just tomorrow the board which can just go and amend the RSA. It will have to go through the process of community consultation in the world, right? But I totally agree from a legal perspective that there must, the agreement must contain an adequate dispute resolution clause, so that I hear somebody earlier on mentioning about arbitration. Yes, why not? Why not tomorrow? Because it's normal. You have to today we have an approximate of 2,400 resource members, and it's normal that our relationship is a contractual one. It's completely normal for a member to be in a contractual dispute with AFRINIC. So if that does happen, then the question is, what should be the dispute resolution mechanism? So instead of each and everyone tomorrow start going to court, but then going to court also means AFRINIC having to defend all these cases. And the next question is, with what resources does AFRINIC use to defend those cases? Ultimately, it comes back to members' fees. So this is why having an alternative dispute resolution mechanism is one of the way forward. So that the court system, you cannot avoid it at all altogether, but you can leave it as a last resort. But first, I would advocate for arbitration. But that, like I said, that's my personal perspective. I don't mind. I don't engage the board at all on this. That's purely my personal legal perspective.
Thank you, Krishna. If there are any other comment or question, and please do introduce yourself.
Thank you, sir. Again, my name's Lawrence Olawale Roberts. And thank you, dear sir, for your presentation. You've touched on a lot of issues, operational, administrative, but I saw that you carefully, purposely, didn't speak to certain issues with the board itself. I feel from the experience we've seen over the last couple of years, it appears that it's a huge danger to continue to maintain the process we do where we renew the board, or rather where we renew half of the board at certain points in time, because then we could quickly run into this issue of having a quorate board. And my thinking is that we should possibly think of a situation where not more than 2/3 of the board retire at any given time. This definitely will require some kind of amendments. And since we now have a board in place that have a flat term, I believe that going forward, where we are trying to fix this issue, we should definitely look at ensuring that only some 20 to 30% of the board retire at any given point in time. But that said, also, there is a lot of operational gaps that we have witnessed. And I think there should also be a communication, possibly when the board is settled in, on how these feedbacks will be collected from the community as sites resource members, and possibly look at a process that can help provide the right policy to ensure that we don't get back into the issues that we have witnessed over the last couple of years. Thank you.
Krishna, do you want to answer or?
Yes, there's one important point that the gentleman raised about, more specifically about the staggered terms of directives. It's a fact. It's a fact when we dig into the records, we find that that specific provision in the bylaw regarding sequential elections, unfortunately, that has, because I myself gathered it when I dig into the records, which is again in the public domain, it would seem that it would, at least from in my view, it would seem that the sequence, the philosophy behind the sequential election has been broken since quite a while. Apparently, it has some link with a previous election held in Dakar. And then from there, several subsequent events occurred, which has actually aggravated the situation, which obviously then, which is why in 2022, we were in a situation where there were 6 seats that would have at some point been declared vacant. And in 2023 onwards, then we end up with no directors at all. So now that the election has been held as per a court mandate, and everyone obviously would have had to be treated equally, so they all have been granted a 3-year term. But it is implicitly understood that one of the top priorities for this board also would have to, because earlier on when I talked about the need about ensuring succession planning within the bylaw, but then I also mean a holistic review of the bylaw, not only on specific areas, but an overall review of the bylaw, looking at things holistically with a proactive perspective approach, and that this philosophy of sequential elections will need to be restored. But it will have that process will have to be done conjunctively in consultation with the community of members.
Thank you, Krishna. I think this is one of the many issues that we will have to resolve, and we have to make the bylaws, I think, resilient not only to this, but many things that we have seen, but we might have not even seen. We have to be imaginative. We have seen, as Krishna said, we never thought in 2020 that what happened now would have happened. So it's we really have to open our eyes, imaginations, and create really a governance system that is robust enough. And I would like to say here, maybe until someone decides to speak, that AFRINIC will not be alone. I have to say, for example, ISOC has had some of these issues, maybe not at this scale, but at some point we have had some issues. For example, our members were not always happy. If you are from chapters, you might know some time where you were not happy with how we communicate, and there were near revolts because you found, for example, a policy that has been adopted by ISOC has not been well discussed within the members. We learned from that, and now I believe that we do a lot of effort to make sure that our members feel included. So we can share that. Board members, not all board members come with experience. That's one of the challenges of having elected board members. Sometimes they are elected for one reason or another, but they don't have the experience. We cannot change that, but we can make sure that they are trained, and that is what we do at ISOC. At ISOC, the board members have support so that they understand what their role are, and so that they can really play that role. So they shouldn't be left alone as if they know everything. So there are so many things that can be done, and I think AFRINIC can learn from its own history, it's what happened, but also from other organizations, other experiences. And I'm sure ISOC will be very happy to share whatever it can, because as I said, many of the problems have happened in ISOC as well. Any other comment, question? Okay, I think people are either tired or don't want to start controversies. But what I think I can say from this morning discussion and today, this afternoon's, I think we have learned to have some civil discussions, which was not the case when all the challenges start. And this is something that we should continue. We need to go into the nitty-gritty sometimes. Some of the questions, like the ones that Amin mentioned, that created really sometimes anger and dissatisfaction within the community, need to be resolved. When I say, well, not here, it's not to really put it under the rug. It's just that this might not be the best forum, because not everybody is aware of this, but it needs to be resolved. And there are many, many. As Kishna said, there are some misinformations. Some of us might have believed those misinformations, and those have to be also clarified, because they might not be true, but some are true, and some people might, respond to those, and then some, will have to be cleared from whatever has been said about them. So I think we can stop here. Alan, you wanted to say something, or you're just okay? So thank you very much. I would like to thank Kishna for giving us his perspective. I think it's important because he lived it from inside and we didn't, most of us. And also because he has the legal perspective, which is critical, because from the legal point of view, you cannot do everything that you want. You have to respect the law. And thank you also to everyone for having listened, but also participated in the discussion. That is just the beginning. We'll need to have many more like this. Thank you very much.